Okay, so yes, hello, welcome. My name's James. I'm here to talk to you today about the root cause of the problems in the world, and these two organisations who basically do that and talk about the root cause of problems: the Zeitgeist Movement and the Venus Project. So basically, for that, we're going to need to take a wider lens view. So, what shape... now, to do this, I'd like to start off with a bit of a thought exercise, because everybody says, oh, think outside the box. And everybody goes, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Or, joined up thinking. Yeah, I do joined up thinking and things. But did we all... if you try to understand that you're a human being, and human beings used to, for instance, think the world was flat. Makes sense. Can't walk on the ceiling, mate. All the stuff would fall off the bottom. Don't be a wally. So actually, if you think about it from that perspective, it's really easy to believe that it's flat. There's no reason to believe otherwise, because we're all informed by our environment and our conditioning. I think the last thing a fish notices in its tank is the water. So that kind of approach. But what I want you to try to do before we go further is imagine you're sort of in a time, go forward in time from here, 500 years, and look back on the way our lives are structured, the system they're structured within the larger sort of global system that is in operation at the moment, and look at it from that perspective. Much as we look at those people who used to think the world was flat, and that putting up red curtains around your bed in the time of the plague would ward off evil spirits so that you didn't die. All these sorts of things, wearing worm necklaces, all sorts of practices that we had before then, and we look back and we're like, God, people believed that? Remember that you haven't evolved much since then, if anything, at least in your physical capacity and your mental capacity. So when you think of it like that, you kind of have to come at this from an angle of frailty, of not frailty, but understanding that you're human and that you're subject to the same sort of logical fallacies and such things like that. So that's kind of a place to start off with. I know it sounds like a bit of an attacking perspective, but if you're really going to take this wider lens view, then there's actually a few of those presuppositions that need to be belted out of the park a little bit early doors. So, but very important, don't believe a word I say, okay? This is another important part of that although I give all that great big sort of speech there at the beginning, we're very, very attuned to authority figures, whether and being told what's right, what's wrong. In school you're told how to wear your tie and everything else like that, and there's a lot of people telling you what to do, what to believe, what to think. Usually without a test in front of you or any actual real tangible evidence. So I'm going to say a load of things, and I haven't really got any apparatus in front of me to actually prove a word I'm saying. So, funnily enough, even though I've come here to hopefully convince you that the perspective I'm going to talk about is a valid one, at the same time, you still need to go, yeah, but I don't believe a word you say until I check it out. So it's kind of a little bit of a perplexing, paradoxical kind of thing to say, but it really is important that if what I say doesn't stand up to evidence, then please just drop it straight away. So, where are we with our current version of the truth and how the world works and how it should work? I think it's quite good to start off with our planetary needs, the planet that we actually live on, and is our home. And as far as we understand, this is where we make our stand here. So, how are things going with regards to our planetary resources as a starting point? So, we'll need 2 Earths by 2030 to keep on our current rates of consumption. The last remaining rainforest could be consumed in less than 40 years. Species are going extinct at 1,000 times their normal rate due to human behaviour. Over 70% of the world's fish species are disappearing at an alarming rate due to overfishing, and 99% of all resources harvested from nature in the United States ends up as waste within 6 weeks. Sorry to give that sort of little statistical analysis straight from me.
Because today from now on is
And of course, because we live in an infinite, very good point, because we live in an infinite growth paradigm, you can imagine how things have gone on since then. In relating that to human needs or human health, 1% of the world control 40% of the world's wealth. 50% live on less than $10. 50% live on less than $3 a day, and 80% on less than 10. And 1/6 of our planet's population is starving. So something is obvious. Our current practices and societal structure is clearly not working to meet human needs on a planetary, global scale, and it is detrimental to the resources and the environment in which we all need to exist.
And yet because of this, it is now changing. Things like this.
And hopefully will change as well if we actually do something. Currently, we run society on a combination of two things, politics and business, but both of these cannot function without a much more important feature that we have to get started with, which is money. Ultimately, you can slice or dice it any way you want, but money is the lifeblood of all social institutions. Political decisions can't come to fruition in its absence. It's the lifeblood of what drives society. So it makes sense to start here. But there's people don't often question where actually money even comes into existence in the first place, which to me seems like the most important question, and there's a good reason for that. Money news is really, really boring, and it's for the business of the high priests called economists to deal with this stuff, and not you lay people, because it's far, far too confusing, bless you, for you to understand. Actually, it's far, far easier to understand than is made out, perplexingly so. So, it's a system called the fractional reserve, or fractional reserve banking, and the best way to describe this is with a little sort of thought exercise. So, let's say, for instance, we're on a closed island. We're on an island, and I'll just take 4 people for this example so that it's easier to sort of understand. So I always just, by tradition, take the 4 people nearest me, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're all on an island called Jamesopia. We use Jamesopia dollars, right? And I'm going to be the banker, so I'm going to give you your means for trade and survival that you need to pay back to me at some point. Now, the first thing should be like, whoa, why should you get to create the means of survival, you know? But let's just say you were too stupid to ask. So, okay, so let's just pretend there's 100 James dollars for you, 100 James dollars for you, 100 James dollars for you, and 100 James dollars for you. So you're going to go out, trade, do your thing. But in a month's time, I want that money back with 10% interest. Okay? And you better not screw with me, because I've got a whole brigade of monkeys, and like lions and tigers, and they're all going to come and rip your flesh off if you don't give me my money back. So, figuratively speaking. So basically a month goes by, la 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 la, give me my money.
Can't have it, I'm gonna spend it.
And the excuses start here. So, a very...
the monkeys off.
Very good, very good. I didn't see that one. That's a good idea. Basically, you've got a little mathematical problem if you haven't spotted it yet. But this was spotted in a very interesting presentation I gave once at a 6th form, where I actually used Monopoly notes, and there were 4 kids sat in the front row, and they went like that. And literally, when like the words left my mouth of "I want my money back," a kid, lightning fast, went and took the money straight out of the hand for the person next to him, and I was just like, thank you. He's just proved my point. That's exactly how the system's set up. Scarcity is literally built into the money supply itself. Money is created out of debt on the time that you go in and you sign the loan contract for the money. That's when the money comes into existence. The banks never had it. They never had it in the first place. It's a scam. The whole thing's a scam. One big scam. And of course, this is how it works. When the scam actually pans out in reality, here's what happens. Let's say you steal his money, right? Just for example. So you can now pay this back to me. You can't. Oh, that's a shame. I'll have to lend you more money, but it's going to come at interest again. It's going to be higher because, let's face it, you're poor. You don't have any money. You've got money. Good idea. I tell you what, do you want to know this scam? It's pretty good. We can loan it out to the other people arriving on the island tomorrow. It's going to be sweet. Yeah? Right? So you put some of it in here, and I pay you an interest fee for the fact that you've just already got money. Yeah, and we can fund this loan scheme out to more people. And figuratively, what I'm doing is I'm taking from you the higher interest payments now and paying him for the fact he's got money, which makes him richer than you poorer. So poverty's built into the structure. That's why, and because of this, the people that create the money at the top, which are the central and private banks, and not the government, okay, because of the central and private banks that actually create this money on the point where you go in and say you want it, you're now starting to see 1% with 40% of the world's wealth, 80% on less than $10 a day, 50% on less than 3, and down here you've got 6 starving to death. And so that you can see why the pyramid is structured that way when you've got money creation like this. How can it be any different? And so basically, that's how money's created. That's the first thing to understand. So it's a structural blockade from preventing the poor from ever becoming rich, while simultaneously needing more of them to come in at the bottom to service the pyramid. So this time round, it's like modern slavery, but this time round the people don't actually know they're slaves because the system's far more insidious. It's not someone there standing with a whip. That whip is interest and inflation and things like this, where inflation is really a hidden tax for the poor when you actually break it down, because you're putting money with no value into the economy that steals the money from the existing money supply, stealing value from that. So you're stealing money from the people who don't have enough money in the first place, so you're taking down the purchasing power of their money, basically, so that what little they did have doesn't buy as much. So how does business play a role in this? Well, it needs you to consume an ever-increasing amount of products to increase the circulation of money in the money supply and keep it churning around. This idea is called cyclical consumption. So that is the need for money to circulate between the 3 players on the economic stage: the employee, the employer, and the consumer. So one employs the other, so both can go out and buy stuff, basically, and anything that keeps this cycle going and in fact speeding up is good for business, regardless of its impact on the planet. Because of course you hear the politicians all the time go, we're going to get growth back. It's like, right, if you were cancer, would that be a good thing to say? when if you think about it, if the planet is our life host, is it a good idea that we speed up the consumption of our resources, or a bad idea? It doesn't, it does not take a rocket scientist to work this out. It's a bad idea. Okay? And of course what they want in the speed up is things to break. Okay? And actually, surprisingly, this is built into the structure as well, with intrinsic and planned obsolescence. Now, the difference between intrinsic and planned obsolescence is the intrinsic obsolescence comes from the need for cost efficiency. So that is basically when you're competing with other people, but you've got to find your place to appeal to purchase power at a certain point in the pyramid structure. So you're making goods deliberately badly. And you can't make anything at the optimum efficiency, because there's always a corner to cut on price somewhere, to make things slightly shoddier. So there's that. There's the far more insidious one of planned obsolescence, which is where goods are actually deliberately made to break down, so that they break down in a respectively quick time to be sold back into the system to make a profit ever quicker. Now you think, that sounds
like
quick.
Apple Max, you mean?
Like Apple Max. Yeah. But there's an even better example, and I really like this one because people go, that sounds a bit conspiratorial. I'm not sure that people actually plan to do that. There's a light bulb that's been on in a fire station in the United States. You've heard of this?
150 years.
110 years.
110.
Yeah, 110 years this light bulb has been on. It's never been turned off. In fact, the townspeople come together once a year to have a little picnic underneath it in celebration. Isn't that sweet? Yeah. And there's a constant camera on it, so you can go online and watch it. And it's been on for 110 years. Now, the light bulb manufacturers got together in 1933 and signed an agreement to state that no light bulb manufacturer would make a light bulb that lasted longer than 1,000 hours. Now, is that conspiracy or just good business? You don't want to go out of business now, do you?
Cartel.
Yeah, it's a cartel. Yeah. And this is really what a competitive system orientates itself towards. You both have an interest in survival, so ironically everybody goes, it's a competitive system, you come up with a better idea, then everybody else can just suck on it. Or they can all get together and make sure they carry on making money. So, it's obvious where the gravitational forces lie in this. Yes, we went through that. Infinite growth on a finite planet is what it creates, and I've already gone through that as well, but I think this image is pretty funny. What the hell is wrong with you people? Row, row. You don't want us all to drown. Yeah, so anyway. But why not have an exponential increase of resources when, of course, scarcity is the driving function of the profit motive? It drives up prices. And the way I like to explain this is, think of it this way. If everybody had an orange tree at the end of their garden, Sainsbury's wouldn't sell oranges. It's just that simple. So to have an abundance of anything is clearly not a good idea, regardless of the fact that we've got the technology and the know-how to do that to meet human needs. It's irrelevant. So I'm afraid this is not an economic system, and it's an anti-economic system. An economy is supposed to economise, to be prudent with its resources. It's to call this wasteful joke of a system we have an economy is an affront to your intelligence. And whenever anybody says, "Yeah, it's the economy," I was like, "Which economy?" I have to say it because it just bugs me a little bit. I'm sorry, it's one of my little glitches. I'm like, no, an economy economises. This thing doesn't economy. This is an anti-economy. And I always make sure I put people straight on that, because they go, do you know what I mean? Because we don't think like that, do we? So it comes back to what I was saying at the beginning of the presentation with the world being flat. When everybody talks about the economy, they're talking about money. No, they're not. Do you see what I mean? They think they're talking about money. They're not. They're talking about something that's opposite to it. Do you see what I mean? It means the opposite. It's like, George Orwell doublethink or something. So the system that created these problems surely you can't fix it using the same system. And I think Einstein put this best when he basically said, we can't solve the problems of today by using the same method of thinking we used when we created them. Just going over and over again, which he also said the definition of insanity is to repeat the same action over and over again and expecting to get a different result. Yeah, so it's a very good way of putting it. So the motivation behind money itself is profit, the profit motive. It's important to note that profit serves only itself. It's neither good nor bad, but its tendency is towards self-orientation. So, for example, I'm a drum teacher. Let's say you come to me for drum lessons. And there's a drum teacher next door to me, and he's better at drum teaching than me in every way, shape and form, and I know it. And he needs drum students, and I need drum students. And you say, James, are you the best person I can come to for drum lessons in this area? What do you think I'm going to tell you? I'm going to lie to you.
Oh, you don't do that. It's nasty.
Well, you say that, but it's not nasty if I've got kids to feed. Sorry, I will still do it. And this is the thing, because I recognise the environmental stimulus I'm involved in.
You see, what that dude was saying. If you do something repeatedly wrong, it's insanity.
I didn't ask to be born into this insane thing. I'm trying to do my best to change it. But the point is
you
that
need to change it yourself. Some other
I agree. I agree.
So when you're asked as a drummer, are you the best drummer? You would say, I think I am.
James, you're going to get lynched.
If everyone acted as though they cared, this system would collapse.
Yeah.
That's good though, isn't it?
James, you've got a number for the other guys, right?
But not everyone.
I just told you it was next door.
I mean, you probably, in some ways, you could offer somebody something that the other person couldn't offer. And what is better anyway? What is more?
Okay, so there's perception involved. If you take away these things, what I'm saying is the orientation is to self-maximise. Is that I have needs that need to be met here. If my needs now change that scenario. If just let's say my needs were being met, right, on a base level, then you get full-blown honesty. You get full-blown honesty from me and nothing else. Because I prefer to be honest. But come on, everybody goes, oh, I believe in honesty. Really? If your politicians were honest tomorrow, this wouldn't work.
No.
Yeah, the whole thing is based on self-maximisation and lies and dishonesty. And so what I'm saying is that it's not a figurative example. If you change the example perhaps slightly, I'm reinforced to lie. I'll give you an example. I can tell you, with all of these lovely values that I espouse and everything, there's still a trigger. for me to tell a lie, I put up an ad for a drum kit in my room. That the person who was selling it kept taking the price down and down and down to the point where I realised that I could sell it on eBay, make a little bit of profit, before selling it on to a student. But I hadn't thought to take down the poster before someone come up and went, "That's a good deal there. What's that all about?" And my first reaction, almost like a ninja, because I'm absolutely flat broke, basically. I haven't got any money. My first reaction was just thinking of the 400 quid that I needed to pay my food bill next month, and I whizzed round and went, "Oh, that's not for sale anymore." And I went, "What did you say? What did you just say?" And I caught myself. I'm like, "What are you saying?" And I went, no, it is for sale. So I caught myself. But do you see my reinforced reaction? If someone comes up to me, attack me now, I'm going to do that, aren't I? It's just survival. Yeah. Because if you haven't got any money, this is the point. I do appreciate what you're saying, but when you're in my position and really shouldn't have even spent the petrol money to get down here, when you've got mouths to feed to talk about this, you have that knee-jerk reaction to just lie. I understand what you're saying, and I really do appreciate it, and I would love to do that, and I do try my best to, but my reaction is that, because I have a reinforced reaction to scarcity.
I believe that's true, and I believe that everybody, they believe their human thing is to just defend themselves. But I think that then we're all going to keep on living in corruption, and everybody's upset with the neighbours because everyone's lying to each other. So everybody stops lying, and
I agree.
Can I just make a suggestion here? I mean, this is the really good thing about it is that if we can keep the presentation rolling, then there will be a little bit of a break,
at the end,
and then a second part which will answer this. Then there'll be a question and answer session.
Sure. But it's a very valid point. Absolutely valid point that you're making, and that is certainly a value shift that we do need to make. Fully agree.
And we do it individually.
Absolutely. I'll try hard. So, okay. Now, one of the other values of this self-orientation. Is basically something called technological unemployment. So since the advent of mechanisation and technology in the global marketplace, what you have is companies moving towards mechanising the means of production and manufacturing to displace human labour because it is more efficient and cheap and easier to get the work done by a machine. Now, what you get in the competitive market system is that when one company automates and cuts their costs of production, the other one, if they want to stay in business, has to do the same thing. They don't have an option. So, and this phenomenon is by far and away the biggest threat to the job market. Now, what these people don't realise is that if you're going to push these people out with no purchasing power, and these people are going to push them out, and these people don't have the purchasing power to buy the goods that the companies are turning out. So this is called the contradiction of capitalism, because of course capitalism rests on the fact that people will go out to earn money for labour to buy the goods on sale. Well, if that's being done by machines, then you've got a contradiction. So what you also have in play here is now you've got 9% of the human workforce actually doing the farming and manufacturing of goods. That's it. Where have all the other jobs gone? They've gone to the service sector. So so these figures show this, that in 1860, 60% of Americans were employed in agriculture, and today that figure stands at just 1%. And in 1950, 33% of Americans were employed in manufacturing, and today that figure stands at just 8%. So, where have all the jobs gone? They've gone to the service sector. But even that's now coming under attack from things like automated checkout desks, kiosks, phone payment services, automated phone payment lines, and the internet as well, and all these sorts of things are now threatening the service sector marketplace as well. The argument goes that new sectors emerge and people train and catch up with the trend, but actually that's growing, widening with things like artificial intelligence and things like Moore's law, which is the exponential increase in technological efficiency and the decrease in the size it takes to do it. And a really good example of this was brought in here today with a telly that is that wide. Now, you know how thin these get now. They're like that. So literally you can see figuratively in this presentation the exact point that I'm making, that technology is decreasing in size. You can fit the whole of the Britannica encyclopedia on the head of a pin. And with things like nanotechnology, which is the ability to manipulate matter at the atomic level on this scale, it's good night Vienna. It's just, you know, the sorts of jobs, it would boggle the mind to think of the sorts of jobs you go, well, that's never going to go away. Oh, yes, it is. Oh, yes, it is. Some crazy jobs you wouldn't expect are going to be going in the next 30 or 40 years. I mean, yeah, there's an implication that if we can get the technology to do, if we can get technology to do the jobs, then why wouldn't we? So basically, what about if a company could build a car that would last for 100 years with no need for servicing or repair? Do you think they would? Of course not. The car industry, just like the light bulb industry, has to basically, it doesn't have it in their interests. We already have electric cars that can go 200 miles at 100 miles an hour on a single battery charge. But the battery patents for that technology are owned by Texaco. So you're not going to get it. Forget it. It's a pipe dream. There are many other examples of withheld technologies like this that we'll be going through in the second half, but you should see first and foremost that sort of abundant, clean and renewable energy efficient technology is just not going to happen in this structure. It is primarily against its interests at the root. So to ask for sustainability in something based on this sort of predication of inefficiency is like asking for apples to grow on pear trees. It is simply naive and childish to think so. So there's a bigger order thing that has to be taken on here. It wouldn't be the first time. It wouldn't be the first time that we have had to make a transition like this. You know, once upon a time we thought it was okay to own people. Literally, people so blind to their culture, like the founding fathers of the Constitution, which is a fantastic document. Oh yeah, everybody should be free and equal. Yeah, apart from black people, because we can own that. What? You know, we'd be like, what? What did you just say? What are you talking about? You know? But so you see, there's a cultural blindness to this sort of stuff. And you may say, well, this is human nature, mate, and it ain't pretty. But is greed human nature? When people grow up in a system that's orientated towards scarcity and towards you being greedy and self-obsessed, it's not really. And if you ask this, then it has to be ubiquitous across the whole of humanity. So if that's the case, then why is it a high-flying city businessman will give up his job for the simple life? Why do we have monks? There's something else in play here that has to be taken into consideration. So the reason I bring this up is the human nature argument is often used at this point to counter these points, but we can see from these examples, plus a complete lack of scientific evidence, that this is simply a false assumption based on looking at past trends of a world that has always been based on scarcity. Human beings are extremely adept to change. It is why we have survived so long in so many different circumstances. No other species creates the amount of social diversity that our species does. That's it. Yeah, we are brilliant at doing that. So the idea that we couldn't adapt and evolve to a new system that takes care of human needs in tandem with our surrounding environment is actually false.
Except that lots of other animals, sorry.
Could you save that, write that down, and we'll do that in the Q&A, please? Is that okay?
Other animals get on with other animals better than we do.
Yes.
No, I don't want to say that.
There's a very good example. In fact, if you bring that up, there's a really good example I can give of that, actually, a little bit later as well. So, but try as we may, we cannot find the evil or criminal gene. People act how they are conditioned by their environment. It is nature via nurture, not versus. So that's obviously a huge topic that you can go into, and if you want to get a copy of this film, Zeitgeist Moving Forward, it actually has a whole 40 minutes on it at the beginning, because it is such a huge question, and people, it's so easy to just go, well, I know the world's crap, but we're crap. You know what I mean? And it's kind of a cop-out argument, because if that's the case, why bother having any social system? Why bother having a health service? Why bother having anything? Don't bother. You should just make deal with whatever you get. Oh, well, no, I didn't mean that. Well, then you must think that the environment has an impact on this then. Like, well, yeah, right, well, then you don't believe in human nature. Sorry. So, why can't politics sort all this out? Well, it's restricted by the same system that everyone else is. And it's furthermore, it's decoupled from reality as a decision-making
decision-making process. It's merely opinion based within a profit motive, within serving the interests of the governing paradigm in which it exists. So it's based on bias, opinion and ego, and all political ideologies and systems are therefore inherently corrupt and unfair, as the basis of all of them is the monetary system and the interest to preserve the current established institutions they serve.
Rather than being in lockstep with the ever-emergent understanding of the natural world and how it functions. You're not about to catch David Cameron or Barack Obama saying democracy is a bad idea, even if we could absolutely unequivocally prove it to be so. Let's just say, for example, you could prove, no, it doesn't work. It's a nice idea, but it doesn't, and I can prove it. They wouldn't listen to you. They wouldn't give you the time of day. Because all opinions, sadly, are not equal. Some are more informed than others. I'm not about to go to a carpenter for brain surgery, so why should lawyers run countries? They don't know anything about social systems. They don't know anything about human behaviour. They don't understand anything about the actual job they're doing. When you actually think it through, you're like, well, how do you increase the agricultural yield? Because food's obviously important for human. Oh, I don't know how to do that. What do you understand about neurological science behind criminal behaviour? Oh, I don't know that. It's like, what should we do then? Get more growth? What are you talking about? Fortunately, we have a decision-making method that benefits every aspect of your survival right at our fingertips. It's not based on mob rule, but rather on testing theories to see what is most true, but it has never been applied to our social system in a humane way. And it is responsible for the chairs you are sitting on, the clothes you are wearing, the food that you ate today, the glasses on your face, the watch on your wrist, and everything else that actually physically supports your way of life, and that's called the scientific method. Put simply, it's environmental feedback, and is the reason that you have all those things I just mentioned, because guess what, guys? You live in a dictatorship. You always have. It's called nature. Sure, you can vote that tsunami, earthquake, or tidal wave, or some natural disaster shouldn't destroy your home and violate your democratic rights, but unless you have prepared for such an eventuality in a very real and technical way, then I'm afraid you're just going to die. So this brings us on to a system that looks to prepare for such eventualities in a very real, objective and technical way, called a resource-based economy. The most basic definition of this is the application of the scientific method for social concern. That's it in a sentence. It's not particularly catchy, I know, but it's the most concise you can get it. So it's the application of the scientific method for social concern. So perhaps a simple way to start to understand this new train of thought properly would be with a bit of a thought exercise. Imagine that there's a planet nearby that's identical to Earth in every way but hasn't been touched by human evolution. And we could take all of the people from this planet and transport them to this one. How would we build?
It's too big. I think 6 million light years away.
Very good, little bit of hitchhikers.
It really is there, yeah. It is there.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I misunderstood what you said.
Sorry,
yeah. No, Kepler 22. Yeah, I did that. They're not entirely sure about some of the.
They've not really seen it yet.
They've not really seen it. It's just in the Goldilocks zone, so it's in a nice place. They're like, that looks pretty. We could go there. It's 5 million light years away, so we're a bit screwed on that. I'm afraid we're going to have to make our stand here, sorry, unless we learn how to terraform Mars anytime soon. So anyway, imagine that you've got a new society to build for the human population on this new Earth. Would it be like this? No. Well, no. Straight away we can see and take a city transportation system like London's, it was built for horse and cart, and see that we wouldn't do it like that again. Although we might, in a profit system, bring in some sort of charging system now that you're driving cars, and make money out of the fact you're going to have to drive into this horrible mess. Anyway, so where do we start with building this new social model? Let's have a little rundown of a list that would probably make some sense for our new society. So we got number 1, energy. That's pretty important. Resources, health, education and culture, general safety and travel. It's not a bad list to start. So first thing we need to do is understand what we have, what we're working with. So we do that with a resource survey. We can do this by using the most advanced technology available to us now, such as satellites, sensors, and other sorts of devices. I won't go into too much now, but it's already being done by the system in place at the moment by people like Hewlett-Packard, who are doing something in this regard as well. And then we need a system to manage the production and distribution of these resources in the most efficient, strategic and sustainable way possible for the entire human population. For this we need a decent decision-making method, and the best one we've found for objective decision-making, which has been applied to everything that sustains our way of life but never our social system, is the scientific method. The scientific method is about correcting previous knowledge using a method that must be based on gathering measurable evidence, testing it, or proving your theory works. It doesn't propose the truth, it merely seeks it. And the wonderful thing about this is it's absent of human ego, absent of human belief systems or anything else. It's what proved that the planet was round. And the hilarious thing is humans took hundreds of years to actually see that a very simple test that proved it was actually true. So you have a huge culture lag there between when we prove the truth and when people accept it. But that's coming down over time. If you actually look at like grandiose kind of new ideas that come out of the woodwork, like evolution or something like that, where we went literally from no one getting it to in 150 years there's a hell of a lot more people on this planet that understand it involved. And Gaia, yeah, things like that come in and what? And then, slowly everybody goes, oh yeah. And so the time is decreasing because we're starting to understand our fallibility, and that's good. There's an evolutionary thing there in thought that I think is very important to point out. So by using a scientific method in this way, we'd arrive at decisions rather than making them. This is a very different concept to understand because we're really not used to this idea. So I'm going to just give you a little bit of an example of a thought exercise by how you arrive at a decision rather than making one, using this figurative example here of a family that live on a plot of land, each house in each corner. Not that this is how we would do it in a resource-based economy, because it's not the most efficient way of plotting this, but you know what I mean. So they decide to plant a fruit tree for food. Where should they plant it? A, B, C or D? What's the one that jumps straight out the screen?
B.
Yeah. In our sort of, in our way that we've been conditioned to think and make decisions, we say B. But actually in this figurative example where we use the scientific method to arrive at a decision, it's actually D. Because you have to take into consideration sunlight, irrigation, pH level of the soil, and lots of different interacting physical factors on the tree's ability to produce the highest yield of food. It's not based on the biased opinion of a political leader or some democratic vote that you will take. Do you want more food? Do you want your food distribution to be more efficient? Yes. Right. Well, let's build that up from the ground up then, shall we? Not saying that that's a final frontier and that's it, that's how it's going to be, say, fixed forever. Because science comes in and goes, what about that? Oh, yeah. But our system doesn't want to update because we're going, well, no, we're making money, so... so it does that. That's what we're really getting at. This is the root cause of the problem. So, now, fortunately we have another tool at our fingertips that can help monitor the dynamic equilibrium between the use of resources by the human population in this sort of strategic layout of how things should be and efficient layout of how things are. And make sure that we're maintaining a balance, and that's computers. Computers can process trillions of bits of information a second, far above human cognitive ability, and it can make sure that we're maintaining that dynamic equilibrium. So, it would be very stupid, indeed, for us to run out of a core resource like we are now, for example, with trees, which figuratively speaking are our lungs. So basically, what would humans' job be in a society where we're using technology essentially as our new slaves to manage the system for us? Well, we would still have a very big input in the area of that has really catapulted us to the top of the evolutionary tree when you actually think about it, which is creativity, ingenuity, and collaboration.
And everybody should join the Woodland Trust and plant a tree.
Indeed. But it's quite a good idea when you're doing something like that to collaborate. There's also a collaborative form of intelligence, because if you're born on an island and you've never experienced anyone teaching you how to plant a tree, probably I would guess the chances are you're not going to have much luck. So let's start running down that list from earlier with our new scientific method decision-making process in play. Bearing in mind that redundancy is built into every area of this system of a resource-based economy to maximise safety and efficiency. So, what do we use currently to keep the system going in terms of energy? Oil. Not only is this polluted to our air supply, but the fact is that we don't need it anymore. And you don't get told this very often. They go, well, nothing else stands up to it, mate. Sorry. Oil's... yeah. Hey, Arnie. So maybe we need Arnie to sort it out. Interesting little side point there. Of course, technology is bad, and the machines are coming to take over. Listen, if you were going to make a killing machine, it would not look like a human being. It's not a very efficient thing. Where are the eyes? In the front. Like, if I'm making a killing machine, dude, this thing's going to have sensors all the way around it so it can see everything coming. Do you really think it would look like that? So things like Terminator are the best example of how we project our behaviour into our technology. Technology is, you can use a hammer to smash someone over the head with it or bash a nail in. It's not good or bad. It's you projecting. Isn't that a fascinating projection of us into our technology, the Terminator film, where the robot looks like a human? Because that's scary, isn't it? Oh, God, it actually looks like someone's coming to attack me. There's that subconscious sort of very interesting message in a lot of our culture's films where we should fear technology. And, of course, they're taking over our jobs as well. Technology is just terrible. Yeah, apart from that dishwasher you keep using every day. Anyway, so... do we have plentiful and abundant renewable energies at our fingertips? Yes, we do. Solar energy, as an example, the rays hitting the surface of the Earth are approximately, every year, approximately 10,000 times our energy use. In fact, with the advent of nanotechnology, which is the ability to change things at the molecular level into new structures, and space-based solar panels, which are really interesting. Obviously, you get cloud cover with solar. So if you put these panels in space facing that and beam it down with infrared to stations on Earth as it rotates to pick up from the infrared, then you're beaming constant energy down. It doesn't matter what the cloud cover is, it's irrelevant. So even places on the planet with absolutely no sun most of the year can get solar energy using this system. And nanotechnology in the solar panels, even with cloud cover now, because you're basically changing the molecular structure of the panels themselves, you're now able to actually pull in radiant energy from the sun, even when there's no sun, when it's getting close to dusk. So that's really exciting development. So wind energy. According to a 2005 Stanford University study, by harnessing just 20% of the potential of this energy source, we could power all of the world's needs. And the interesting thing is, you see these things that keep going up and everybody's like, oh, they're a really good idea. Actually, they're outdated. But of course now people are making money out of them.
They're only 4.5 million each, so the payback on that's quite... And one fell over the other day. Got blown over by the wind.
Good news.
So they're rubbish.
Hang on a second.
They are absolutely...
I'll carry on my presentation when I've stopped laughing. Basically, you've got some very interesting developments in this. You can basically... This guy had this fantastic idea. I love the way that this is how great human creativity is, really. So we're doing this wind thing. Okay, so where's the wind? What's up there? And so we went, oh, so it's about 1,000 feet up. Yeah, well, why don't we put a big balloon up there with two lines to it, like two bits of string, put them into two turbines on the floor. That's going to spin a figure of 8, move these things in the turbines, and we'll get energy that way, which uses a fraction of the resources. Okay. So, you see what I mean? It's just a really simple... A child could come up with that. You know what I mean? But it's such a good idea. And there's also... like you see the cylindrical towers with the sort of spiraled arms coming down. Basically, in the middle of them, if you have them suspended on magnets, so magnetism, and you get no friction, like that'll blow it. And then it goes almost, exponentially. It doesn't. The inertia keeps it going. No friction. So things like that are coming through. And of course, look at that. You've got a spindled tower like that, rather than great big things coming out the side with gravity going.
They have to start those with a diesel engine, by the way.
Exactly. Come on. Just make sure, and then it's absurd. And the thing is, they go, well, wind energy can't cut it. Well, that's because you're building them like a moron. Please.
4.5 million each.
And
they fall over.
And they fall over. So yeah. Tidal Power. This could supply 34% of the UK's energy supply if applied strategically and efficiently. And something the resource-based economy does as well, which is a generalist point of view, because you have specialisation. Your thought doesn't naturally go to sort of dealing in a unified, joined-up thinking way that everybody seems to promote so much. Okay, well in that case, my version of joined-up thinking is this: the Mississippi River. You can have, currently the farming land near there, the nitrates are coming off of the soil and poisoning the river, poisoning the fish, depleting the fish supply. Now, if you took something I'll mention later, so I may as well mention it now. If you took if you put tidal generators in the bottom of there, as it flows through, you could provide energy to the people who live on the side of the Mississippi River. But at the same time, if you built those with a membrane, you can desalinate water through that process as well. So you're providing those people with clean drinking water, and you're cleaning the water from the mess we made on the farmland. So the fish are going to go up in fish population. You make it so that the fish can actually swim through this system that I'm talking about under there. And at the same time, you're providing energy not just for them, but for a hydroponic food farming facility, much as these hydroponic instruments that we've actually got in this room at the moment on display. Hydroponic farming is basically the growing of plants in organically nutrient-rich water without soil, so it's soilless agriculture, so you're using a fraction of the water, so these people aren't using water in a dumb way anymore. So the hydroponics, basically, if you had a 1 acre floor space, 12 stories high, and you grew the plants in cylindrical tubes that slowly rotate, what happens is the plant only has to fight against gravity for half of its lifespan. So you can grow them up to 2/3 as quickly and larger as well, because of the fact that it's not fighting against gravity. So you don't need pesticides or nitrates to do this. You're doing it completely organically. Now, if this 1 acre floor space, 12-story high building, you can produce as much organic, completely natural food against the polluted food that we kind of have now with our current farming methods as 400 acres of farming land. 400 times less space and clean.
I believe they've already started doing that in Cuba.
Really?
Yeah, I think Monty John, what's his name? Went there. I think they've started doing it in Cuba.
Fantastic. Yeah, vertical farming is a reality in terms of the technical application. But you see, that joined up thinking now you don't have the farmlands polluting the rivers, you've got an abundance of food, you've got an abundance of fresh water, you're cleaning up your river supply, you're increasing your abundance of fish, and you did it pretty much with 2 facilities.
Yeah, but let's join up. The businesses are making
money, there we go. Yeah. And the elephant is back in the room again. Right. So, wave power. Almost seamless transition to the next wonderful technology.
I love this one.
Wave power.
Yeah.
This could potentially fulfill half the world's energy need with this systems theory approach to planetary management. Systems theory, which is really what I just described there, where you're taking into an integrated sort of approach to things. Geothermal technology, which uses a process of mining heat from deep underground, could potentially supply us with all of the energy we would ever need, because of course we've got a rejuvenating system inside the Earth. So, in other words, we have nothing but a clean abundance of clean energy right at our fingertips. But the problems are that once these are set up, energy is abundant and not scarce. Scarcity is what drives the profit motive. Remember, so simply this will not happen in a price system. Okay, so food. I won't go through this one because I just went through it earlier to make that sort of extra point about hydroponics. One extra thing with hydroponics is you can have aquaponics built into this, which is fish, basically in fish tanks, and the fish waste feeds the plants, and then the part of the plants can go back to feed the fish. This is another important part of the resource-based economy. It understands and respects the synergistic relationship between everything in the universe, not just even on our planet. Because remember, if we were just a fraction out this way, fraction in this way, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. There is a balanced and synergistic interactive relationship to everything in existence, including ourselves. I think the best quote for this was by Mr. Jacques Fresco, who is the lead designer of the Venus project, who came up with a resource-based economy, in which he said that just because you can't see the plug up your arse doesn't mean it's not there. So, he has a way with words. So this is a lovely vertical food farm, and there's the 400 acres of dumbness that I mentioned earlier that we're currently engaged in. If you think about it, we've been planting stuff in the ground for like thousands of years. And what did we do? We changed our technology on the top, even though we've actually known about like hydroponics for a long time. No? So,
anyway, in Star Trek.
Yeah, so in Star Trek. So, water. Are there more intelligent ways of producing clean drinking water? Yes, there's a few of them, but the most popular one we'd all be familiar with is desalination, which is removing excess salt and other minerals from salt water to create fresh drinking water. Very interesting thing is, desalination plants at the moment are very energy-hungry kind of beasts, and in certain places maybe that might still be a reality, but in sunny places you've got a really nice little advent. If you look at the Venus Project's circular city designs, inside those you have rivers that would run salt water through, but you have like domes over the top like that are solar in basis, and what happens is you're heating up the tunnel, and the condensation from the water can then drip down inside the mechanism here to desalinate.
They had that film, The Life of Pi, that's just come out. He had this little kit in this lifeboat, and it was one of those.
Brilliant.
Really?
It was, and it was just a little dome thing, and he just filled it with the salt water, and he just took the clean water off it. It's amazing.
And more than that, I suppose grotesque as you might think this is, but you can actually take wastewater and clean that straight back again. And think about the design of a bathroom. How dumb that is! It's so dumb. I'm going to have a shower in drinking water. And then where's the water going to go? Down there. Well, hang on a second. Why can't we have that grey water go into the system so that when I flush it, I'm just... Why don't you flush the... I don't get it. Why aren't you recycling? Why don't you just build a synergistic system? Why, exactly. Victorian houses with Victorian thinking. I mean, literally all I see when I look at our houses and the way they're built is just dumb. That's all I see. They are very, very, very dumb.
Scandinavia, they have the reed beds on the outside of the building. They just put it all through that and pump it back in again.
Which brings us very nicely onto shelter. Well, I didn't even know that was coming, actually. It looks seamless. It looks seamless, didn't it? Delete that bit from the video. So right, okay. So if there were... Basically, George Carlin put this best when he said if there were any money to be made from eradicating homelessness, then there wouldn't be any. So... It's interesting to note that automated production, delivery and construction of robust buildings is now a reality through the advent of technologies such as GPS-guided tracking systems, AI, robotics and 3D printing. We also have the ability to build communities not just on land, but on top and under the sea as well. Now, the interesting thing here is 3D printing is going to change everything. Think of what 2D printing did to, old parchment or whatever, and photocopies. Think what photocopiers have. Now, 3D printing is the printing of 3D objects, actually 3D objects. So, a couple of weeks ago we did, although we had the capabilities to do this a long time ago, we 3D printed the first house. In Japan, they made a skyscraper where they 3D printed the pieces like a Meccano set almost, put it on there, put it up with cranes 3 weeks.
Yeah,
hardly any humans.
Amazing.
Hardly any humans.
Yeah, amazing.
And so the point is, what we do at the moment is we go cut down a load of trees in Brazil, right, or wherever it is, and bring that to London. Right, we go and get some bricks from God knows where over here. We get the whole thing together in a great big mishmash. Throw, I think 70% of away in a skip. And then we go, and then the government go, we need to be more sustainable with how we build with how we do things. And it's like, well, how did you build that last house? Well, we put like a sort of less energy hungry boiler on it. What? Do you know what I mean? So you could build a house basically. Right, you could build a house that's basically a dome structure is one of the most efficient, robust designs that you can have for a house. And if you build that structure with memory metals, where you heat these metals, you make the structure and then you heat the metals so they can you cool them so they compress, and you compress the metals, you heat them back up again, and it expands to be the dome. So you can just transport these to a place, put them up, have guided machines that basically build the foundations and put the damn thing in. But these are built with photovoltaic shells, which I think I mentioned earlier, which is the pulling in of radiant energy into the building, and the thermocouple effect in the skin of the building. The thermocouple effect is two dissimilar metals, which if you basically charge them in a particular way can either pull in heat or expel heat. So you've got an automatic radiating or air conditioning system, especially in a hot country. And if you use the thermosiphon effect, you can actually push hot air and keep it circulated in the building. So you're pushing it down and up and down and up. What do we have at the moment? Turn the radiators on at the bottom and top of the house, and the heat goes all out through the roof. You're just dumb. So this plus other methods of sustainable practice means that overpopulation is only a problem if you have a retarded system of planetary operation like we do now. It is my disposition that we could invite many, many more human beings to this planet and enjoy the wonderful gift we've all been given of life. It's just so freaking annoying and insulting that people walking around going, 7 billion people on the planet, we're overpopulated. No, we're not. Only in a dumb system are you overpopulated. You could fit all the people. It sounds like a big number, doesn't it? But you could fit all of them on the Isle of Wight. Isle of Man.
Isle of Wight.
Isle of Wight. It is the Isle of Wight, shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. And every family on this planet could have a 4-bedroom house in Texas and an acre of land.
True.
We are not overpopulated. That is a lie. And but okay, fair enough. Fair dues. We don't. We want to keep family numbers down, just for maybe even human relations. You could argue, fair enough. Well, where does most of the overpopulation happen? Poor areas. Well, if we're meeting human needs, my bet is we're not going to have so much of a problem with overpopulation. And in fact, tests have been done with this in India, where you go to two tribes, villages rather, in India, and in one village you emancipate women and bring education to that village, and the birth rate goes down from 7 to a ratio of 7 to 1, so one mother, 7 children, to 3 to 1. 3 to 1, and in this one it stays the same. So if you really want to keep overpopulation down, that's the way to do it. Oh, thanks. Sorry, I have rambled on. By all means, feel free to take that and give it a watch. I hope you found it interesting.
Sorry, we've got to go.
No, not at all. Not at all. I should learn not to ramble. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
Bye, Anne. Bye, Martin.
Right, okay. So clothing, with robust design and the intelligent design and the efficient recycling of clothes, there'd be no need to have a Primark anywhere. It's really a combination of fashion-orientated thinking and the lack of purchase power that keeps children in sweatshop factories around the world making our cheap clothes anyway. This is a sick byproduct of Western society's desire for endless consumption, and fashion points to the notions of ego and image rather than the practical notion of wearing clothes to stay warm. And if we were not manipulated by advertising to spend money we don't have on things we don't need to create impressions that won't last on people we more than likely don't care about.
Well said.
So,
can you say that again?
Yeah, go on. I want to see if you stumble.
I thought it was very good, actually.
Excuse me, before you go on, I've just got to mention a point about that, because part of that quote comes from Fight Club with Brad Pitt, and he says advertising has us chasing clothes and cars, doing jobs we hate for whatever. Oh, and 10 years or so later, Chanel. He's advertising Chanel.
Yeah. You know what that's called?
You got paid for both.
Hypocrisy.
You know what that's
there you
called?
are.
Cognitive dissonance. That you can say a speech like that in Fight Club and then go and advertise Chanel.
He was only acting in that.
But, you'd like to think it have an impact.
It wasn't,
you know what I mean?
Sorry.
Yeah, I know.
You'd like to think the guy was still remote.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But yeah. But I don't know. So basically. Ooh.
I swapped the baby for cake.
You swapped the baby for cake.
How did you do that?
Good deal. That's a needs-led resource.
Yeah. Scarlett is a little angel, and look, there's angel cake.
Yeah.
Shall I pass it down? What's your way?
I think if we, I promise I'll storm on ahead and leave your stomachs rumbling not for too long.
We'll have a break after.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have a break after this. Clothing, by the way, really interesting thing you can do if you type nano clothing into YouTube. What we've got is nanofibers. It basically now means that you can pour like Hershey's sauce, like chocolate sauce, on your jumper or ketchup or whatever it is. It just goes off like it doesn't even touch it. Gone.
Don't tell my customers that I'm in the laundry business.
Do you see my point? Yeah. There you go. So that's my point. Do you see the game? You see the game we're all locked in.
Yeah.
You see, wouldn't you rather also? But you see, then the joined up thinking from there goes to. So hang on, if we put like oxidants in the clothes and actually oxidizers and basically put them out in the sun so they could almost self-clean themselves, and they've got this nanofibers built into the clothing as well. We wouldn't need washing machines that much, or tumble spoons.
We do have a product actually that does
Alec
stop
Guinness
the
in
stain, so
film in the 50s, man in the white suit.
yeah, so it solves it.
What's that? I haven't seen
Man in the white suit was basically
that.
a suit that would clean itself, and
Why shouldn't we get to that stage?
but again, it was one of those. Is it a conspiracy or was it good business sense that prevented it happening?
So do you see what I mean? That there's
The joined up thing to there where they go, well, we should use less energy. And you go, well, why don't you use that? And then you pipe up and go, because I go out of business.
Yeah.
And so it's just, so warmth.
I'm not bothered, by the way. I only work for someone else. I don't really care.
There's a very interesting value system in that as well that I just want to point to real quickly. Yeah. Well, I think you should work for a living. Well, what would you do if you won the lottery?
I'd create things.
I'd give up work.
Yeah.
Well, what are you talking about then? I thought you just said you wanted to work for a living. Yeah, but I wouldn't do this. Well, what would you do? I'd probably go work at a charity or invent new technology or to do underwater photography or learn to play an instrument or something like that. And it's like, well, so you believe in hard work if it's something you enjoy and you're passionate about? Yeah, me too.
Absolutely.
Right, so, health. With an incentive to produce the healthiest society possible based on human needs, our attention would be turned to prevention rather than cure. Yes. However, by using I knew that by using more accurate technology in operations, eventually treatments involving nanorobotics, we could easily create a far better standard of health for all. It's very, very easy to do, and an awful lot of health conditions are actually environmentally stimulated that you wouldn't believe, because the pharmaceutical companies and the medical industry don't want you to think that. They're like, oh, you've got that condition? Oh, we've got a pill for that. Well, what about, hang on, where does that come from? Oh, well, scientific studies show that actually it's probably created by your unequal culture. Oh.
And who does the studies?
Exactly. Probably
Not
not people who are paid that
much. You've been to the Pfizer plant in North Kent. There's acres and acres of laboratories and production of drugs.
Yeah, drugs, basically.
They
create a problem that then they can service to sell you back in to,
it's like
keep
vaccinating
you...
children.
It's
You're
like
making
keeping
them.
you
That's
sick.
where it starts.
Yeah.
So the basically the implication is that you don't want healthy people. Cancer's good. Cancer's a good thing. It contributes to GDP.
Yeah.
Is it? Why would you want a cure for cancer? That's not a good idea.
So does crime.
Yeah, it's a good idea. It services the system.
So do wars.
Yes, wars as well. So you've got problems create profit. Problems create profit. So you've got all of these organisations out there taking a problem and going, we want to solve that problem, we want to solve that problem, we want to solve that problem. Whereas they don't realise the reason you have that rainbow in the first place is because of the root cause down there. If you solve that, you branch out and you solve these problems properly. A proper way of solving a problem is a technological application to solve that problem. It seems a little bit, well, what do you mean? I'll give you a quick example. In New York, biggest problem at the turn of last century was horse shit. Right? Basically, you had horses in a city crapping everywhere. Right? Big problem. So the politicians said, "I'll get rid of the horse shit." No, you won't. I will. Vote for me. You know what got rid of the horse shit? Cars.
Every fool.
No problem. I mean, you've got a new problem with pollution, you've got car accidents, so as you get a manifesting solution, you get new problems with that, and then, and you could update and get better. There's no such thing as a utopia here. But you see, my point is that everybody voted and had arguments and town hall meetings, and what got rid of it? Technological application to solve the problem. Gone.
Yeah.
So, education and culture is a huge part, key feature to a resource-based economy, because it is a train of thought and how you think that creates this world you see around you, and it created, you know, all the problems that we face now, and that I would argue that we need to get solved. So if we don't change how we think, we don't change anything. So children would be taught to question illegitimate authority and would be encouraged to learn about whatever subjects interest them. In our new world, would it not make sense for education to teach a wide variety of subjects that are relevant to our survival and collective prosperity within our environment, rather than boxing you into a slimline profession that suits the monetary system in order to make ends meet? It's no wonder that some are confused with regards to what job they should do when they leave the education system, because it may well end up being the one that they do for the rest of their life. The smarter our collective population is, the richer we all are. The inspiring aspect of a resource-based economy is that every exciting idea you come up with doesn't need a business plan, funding or a patent to get off the ground. All it needs is to make sense scientifically and have the resources to be put into action, and it happens. The best bit about this is that everyone's a winner. In other words, learn, contribute, and you and everyone else shall receive. You'd be taught that knowledge moves on and always has. Remember, the world was once flat, the earth was the centre of the universe, and children would be taught to not jump to conclusions unless they have the evidence to back up their claims, and being wrong would be celebrated in the pursuit of truth. So, general safety would be built into every system wherever possible, of course, but as for safety from harm and crime, remember that most crime is linked to scarcity, poverty, upbringing, environment and culture. A relative abundance of goods and resources and a more equal society will get rid of most crime in the long run. Equality is a very big part of what we talk about. Societies that get their level of GDP to a certain level, so you're meeting the basics of human needs. Once you get past that point, inequality is literally a barometer of how you measure your social health. It creates all sorts of manifest different problems, like in educational schools, reading, literacy, cancer, asthma, crime rates, re-imprisoning rates, teenage pregnancies, violent crime. Literally, you name a barometer of social health, you see there's inequality next to it, because inequality creates shame, looking down on, all sorts of things, because human beings are biopsychosocial machines. It's not just a case of saying that, well, you're just what you eat. In fact, really interestingly, if you take a baby and you feed it, clothe it, change it, but you don't touch it, you don't show it any affection, you don't actually interact with it emotionally at all, you siphon it off, but you meet its physical needs, it will die.
Yeah. Have you heard about changing water? You know, how if you have negative thoughts towards water and positive thoughts towards water, the actual structure of the water molecules change themselves as well.
I did hear about that.
Dr. Emoto.
I'll check that out. I had heard something about it, but I've never had time to look into it.
And forget about water. If you give it to the people around you and yourself, that's the way it's about, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when we're going to create this,
we'll come to that. Adam's going to come. Adam's going to deal with the transition, like how to get from here to there. That's the first big question. So I'm going to try and rattle through this because I've gone on and on and on. As long as this stops bleeping at me, what did I do? There we go. So basically, if people were raised in a culture that was geared towards the direct application of people to resources and vice versa, then people become the new currency. Why do you never see anybody tear a £50 note in half? Because there's no reinforcement for it. Why would I attack you if we're actually directly correlated to each other in our system? You could be dealing with the hydroponic food farm that keeps my food supply running. So you become my currency, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
And without the benefit, without the implication of a price system, I don't have to dominate you anymore. I don't have to say, do this. You know, it actually becomes, do what you want. You're not hurting me. If you've got an abundance of things, the reason we go, those bloody work shy, they sit on their arse all day doing nothing, that's because you know they're stealing your taxes. If someone wants to sit on their arse, not that they would do in a resource-based economy, because we very much are trying to reinforce people to be benefactors and contributors to society, you know, and care and things like this, and empathy and all these sorts of things. But let's just say, for argument's sake, someone sat on his arse all day doing nothing. I don't care. He's no impact on me. He doesn't stop me living. If he wants to sit on his backside and do nothing with his life, I don't care. I don't have to care. Then I don't have that stress of like, oh, I'm going to have to work every day doing this. He sits on his backside, doesn't do anything. You know, it's just like, oh, take that away, let him do it. And the best part is, if right at the end of his life he's laying there like one of those blobs on what's that movie, Wall-E? Yeah, like sitting there like that, and he's sitting there like that, and he goes, actually, I've got a really good idea for hydroponic food farming, and then puts it into the machine just before. Then he made one contribution. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. So anyway, basically, we would see a huge decrease in crime. I'm not claiming that we could really perhaps ever get rid of it. You know, there'll still be crimes of passion and things. But if you think of all the monetary-related crime that's out there.
But that's not, that's not
and the
just
treating of
crime.
drug addiction by putting people in prison, how violent is that? You've got people with a medical, an issue, a dependency, an addiction, and you're putting them in a place where they're surrounded by violence and, locking them up 23 hours a day. And they were like, "Oh, we ever seem to have a problem with rehabilitation here? Are you mental? What are you talking about?"
You treat someone like a criminal, they're going to keep treating
Exactly.
like a criminal.
You send them to a place where they learn to be better at it. You must be insane. So anyway, travel. So with GPS sensors and automated transport systems, we can now avoid most, if not all, car crashes, drunk driving incidents, traffic jams, and all other negative aspects of the use of the roads. This is something shown with Google Car, which is a car that basically drives itself. It's done 300,000 miles in the United States with no driver inside it, through cities, through rural, through every area you can imagine. It's had one incident of a crash, and that was actually when a human being ran into the back of it.
Google Car, never heard.
Google Car,
No,
check it
no.
out, absolutely amazing. And so, to me, with 1.5 million people that die on the roads each year, and that's not even to mention the injured people, to put a human being in charge of a 2-ton vehicle that shares the same road space as a child, to me is the most inhumane idea you could possibly come up with when we have this technology available to us. And I just don't see why there's any family who should ever have to go through the pain of losing a loved one in such a horrific way ever again. It's just frankly unacceptable. So another thought with this in mind would be, why would you even need to own a car in a society based on collaboration and efficiency? Think how many cars are actually used at any one time. Why? Because the world can't bring themselves to share. Instead of leaving
Stop saying things like that, because the world is now beginning to bring itself to share.
But only in a small way.
It needs to be far more integrated. It needs to be built in technically, because communism had a really good idea with sharing. That worked out with 50 million people being dead. So this is why this isn't communism. It's common sense. Yeah. Why have all of these cars sitting in a car park all day when you could use the resources for something else more beneficial if you actually just made them access availability? This is what we talk about. We don't talk about, you want to own something, own it, but we're going to make it so available you wouldn't want it dragging you down. Why? We have these houses full up with junk we don't use most of the time. Let's be sustainable. Well, why don't we have a resource library and a structured way of living, so that actually I don't need to have all this stuff bogging me down. I can get up and go when I want to go and where I want to go. Remember that for 95,000 years or more of our species evolution, we were nomadic. We moved around. We didn't settle in one place. That's a lie. It's not true. It only happened with the agricultural revolution, when we planted stuff in the ground and we needed to be around one area. That's not our natural nature. Our natural nature is to get up, travel, go around, experience this wonderful world we have. What the hell's wrong with us?
Let me just mention that thing. That there's a brilliant thing in one of the films that Jack Fresco talks about. He talked about his time when he was in Polynesia, and he gave a load of baubles and bangles to the people there. And within a couple of days, they'd built him a boat. He was like, "Oh wow, thank you." A couple of days later, the boat disappeared. And he said, "Where's my boat gone?" He said, "You didn't use it, you didn't need it."
Yeah. And that's they don't see it as theft. He came, why? In fact, he came out whilst they were doing it. He's like, "Why are you stealing my boat?" They were like, "Stealing? What's stealing? You don't understand what it is. You don't use it. They just don't understand ownership. They don't even understand it." And we even do this in our relationships. We own each other in our relationships as well. How amazing is that? You've got to understand, if you've been conditioned into a culture like that, it's going to permeate every area of your life. I've learned that the hard way. Anyway, because of the ridiculous, because of the cut that from the tape. Because of the ridiculous levels of efficiency that would exist in such a system, due to the use of the best known methods of production, recycling protocols built into the manufacturing of goods in the first place, and the building of goods to actually last, we can easily create an excess abundance to meet everyone's needs, using things as you go along rather than hoarding them. Ownership is an outgrowth of scarcity. It is an inefficient, immature and outdated practice and does more harm to the ecosystem we all share than anything else, and this juvenile, childish, foolish and petty notion simply must be outgrown if we expect to survive in any meaningful way as a species on spaceship Earth. So, did you know by the use of maglev train technology, in a closed frictionless tube suspended by magnetism, that you can travel at long distances on this planet of up to 4,000 miles an hour?
I designed that in primary school. I have the drawings.
Wow. Fantastic!
You see? Just goes to show.
Brilliant.
Did you take the patent out?
You didn't take the patent out, there you go, that's where you went wrong. So it uses 2% of the energy of planes, and is basically nearly completely clean and safe, so you could go from London to Japan in less than 2 hours. But this is, of course, naturally ridiculously expensive and incredibly unlikely to happen in a monetary system, regardless of how efficient it is. So this is the sort of world I'm talking about. A world of collaboration for the common good via the best known methods of approach, starting with our resources and the best decision-making method we know of applied to planetary, social and human well-being holistically. A world with no money, no poverty, no war, and a vastly reduced crime rate achieved by addressing the root cause of social problems rather than picking off the leaves of the tree, so to speak, by implementing laws, taxes and irrational methods of thinking in an attempt to solve problems. Put plainly and simply, it is time for us to grow up. It's not perfect, it's not a utopia, there's no such thing, there never has been and there never will be. One of the only truths pretty much the only truth we've ever known is that things will and have always changed. So, but why wouldn't we have a culture that is in lockstep with that emergent change, our emergent understanding of the natural world and how it works? In fact, I would say that we are currently living in a utopian fantasy where we actually think we can go on having infinite growth on a finite planet and all walk off into the sunset and live happily ever after. That is a utopian fantasy. What I'm talking about is logical thinking for rational minds who want to make this world a better place. Now, the transition Adam's going to be mentioning, because this is always the biggest question in the room, how do we get from here to there? It's going to be messy. Most transitions in human life are, unfortunately. I wish I could say it was going to be easy, but the more people who understand this train of thought and spread this information and communicate to people,
then the less painful that transition will have to be. But the first recognition is to realise that it starts here. So, basically, the need to get from A to B is the main thing here. Just because you don't know how to get from A to B doesn't resolve the need to do so. You don't just sit down and go, well, I'll just start. Well, no, you won't. You know, if the necessity is to make the journey, then work out how to make the journey. But I don't know how. Well, of course you don't. You didn't take the first step, did you? So the Zeitgeist movement is here, in a sense, to work out and work together in tandem with other organisations to try to make that step towards the transition, towards this kind of social model that we talk about. And you can get involved, and you go to the website, obviously, and work out from there where your best place, where you fit, you know, where your abilities would fit in this. Everybody has an ability. Don't go, I can't do anything. Everybody has. I wasn't doing presentations until 2 years ago. I'd never used PowerPoint. I hadn't done any of these things, but I didn't have an exhibition. You just have to make it happen.
What triggered you to? I've seen that. Looked at this on the internet. I think it's excellent, and I'm really very interested. What kind of triggered you into?
Well, obviously, there's conditioning aspects in my past. That would have emotionally triggered me, to want to be involved in this, such as my father being a completely greed-obsessed, shouty lunatic through most of my youth, and then dropped dead of a heart attack because of it.
I
So that didn't help. That didn't help, right? But it's not just that. It's a whole host of other things that get mixed into the melting pot, and an admiration for the scientific method at a young age. Plus, on top of the thing that really tipped the scale for me is those maglev trains. I just grew up going, well, if we can do it, we do it. I'll give you a really good example. In that exhibition you'll hopefully see tomorrow, kid walks in there, right? This is the best thing. That's why I love saying this stuff to kids. Because a kid walked in there and he went, whoa, you mean to say we can do all this? And I went, yeah. And he's like, well, why aren't we? And I went, well, it costs too much. He went, money's dumb.
Well, they'll
you know what I mean? I was like, that's the fastest explanation I've ever done in my life.
We won't do it, so they will do it.
Well, you know, we're all in this together. And all that stuff.
But the young,
but what we imprint today is ready for tomorrow.
Exactly. Yeah. We've got to show. We've got to show our kids that it's possible. We've got to say, you know, we didn't know about this, but it's here. You know, it makes sense, doesn't it? Well, you know, my kids get it. It's an easy thing to grasp, really.
We just have it knocked out of us, don't we?
Yeah, knocked out of you, man. You know, pay your taxes.
It's always there. It's always been there.
Pay your taxes. Go to work. Be responsible. You know, and all that bash.
Conditioning.
So the Venus Project is the organisation that kind of came up with this. It's 75 years of Jacques Fresco's work. Naturally, you're going to have a lot of questions, and it's a good thing to question. But remember that it's also good to be wrong. So don't be afraid to sort of actually think. Just think to yourself, even though you don't maybe get the answer you want from me today. Which is absolutely fine. Just have that in the back of your head that you go, well, maybe there's a better way that gets answered, or maybe I need to look at the evidence a little closer. And by all means, if you don't, and you go and you look at it and go, no, that doesn't stand up, then just drop it. Yeah. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. I'm just presenting a case. So, for a long time now, the world's religious leaders, philosophers and writers have been proposing notions of how the world can become a more peaceful, happy and joyful place in which for us all to live. But the ability to technically achieve the abundance required for such a globally collaborative system was never a reality until now. We've achieved so much as a species, and to our knowledge are the greatest evolutionary success story this universe has ever created. Quite simply, we are amazing, and together there is nothing we can't do. We have changed before, and we can do it again, but not without effort. So I'm afraid the first change has to start with you, not someone else. In the final analysis, we are one people and we share one planet.